starting another video here on this 5th year, and unfortunately I'm working so I don't have as much time as I did over the weekend to just kind of play through a few turns. And also my illness is coming back and my brain capabilities are beginning to falter, just as the point where I'm entering parts of the game that maybe I haven't seen before. I did want to, the reason I came in to start talking, beyond just hearing my own voice, is I was just considering, hey, as I started looking at this anew, it's been pretty much 24 hours since I last looked at it. I see, hey, South America has to go to Uranus, and they're interested in this. Those missions help tell me what I'm about, right? In addition, the ships being on these tracks for the various planets, again, it helps remind me what the hell I'm doing. Now, this is a fairly long game. It's pretty likely you will take a break and come back, and if this was High Frontier, you'd be like, what the hell am I up to? I don't understand anymore. That, in addition to all the calculations that go into moving things, makes that a particularly onerous game to cope with. And this one, okay, sure, it goes into less details, but man, it's easier to pick up and just see, kind of like a war game is. You can say, yeah, I've got troops massed on the Russian border. That's where I'm going. It's often almost impossible in High Frontier to tell what the hell your eventual goal was. Now, of course, you could write notes to yourself. I'm not that clever. America, Japan, Europe, because they screwed up and I gave them their money back, are all launching rovers for Phobos. There's enough time that I can get there, explore it, and possibly get a mission completion by the end of the decade. Given that none of them have completed another mission, it's kind of more important. They kind of want to get one of them done, right? For the bonuses for having a... Oh, wait, Europe's already got a mission. Never mind. Yes, that's Japan. Okay, well, whatever. It still is worth something to gain the mission. So, but less important than it is for South America and Asia, who do not have a mission yet. North America and Russia were low on money. Russia, well, so is China. China didn't do anything. They kind of don't have money. They have enough money to unreserve this if it lands on Earth, but not relaunch it. Russia chose to re-energize the Kuiper crew, and they're going to send that back out to do stuff. It was not worth it for me to lift this off just to pull. Essentially, it would take an LV2, so I would be pulling 3 of my 4 billion credits to pull 1 resource up. Just not worth it. So I'm not able to do anything of value with that. U.S. and North America out of points entirely. So I guess we move on to the movement. One thing about movement I want to say, something feels a little weird to me, which is, as far as there's an odd wording here. At the start of the game, you'll need to use LVs to make moves from Earth. Okay. Going on. REs must always be carried on an LV for their first move from everywhere. I think that's meant to be their first move once they're built. But it's not absolutely clear to me. So, for example, if I'm moving from Vesta with this orbiter, can I leave? Pretty sure the rovers can't just leave places, but it seems a little odd that the orbiters can. The flybys, well, they have their own special rules for movement. I'm not sure if they don't do a search here, if they could do like a heliocentric that rewound them. That seems again like a violation of their basic principle. But the big thing that I have is, do the orbiters, are they supposed to have enough thrust? Very clearly the crewed vehicles are supposed to be able to fly around places. And that makes sense because they must always be carried by an LV when leaving Earth. Which is again a little weird. Presumably they could build a base on other planets that have significant gravity, like Mars or something, and they don't need an LV to lift them off. Again, that's details that something like High Frontier that High Frontier covers very well. Here, I'm left with kind of this, well, following the letter of the law, I think I understand what the rules are, but I'm not entirely sure I agree with what they present as. It's an important question. So, for example, the Russians, I don't know, for whatever reason, they have an orbiter going around Ganymede. They have no particular interest in that. They do have an interest in Saturn. Well, can I just heliocentric transfer for 2 more movement? I don't think there's a problem. It says ships here, but ships, you know, they would specify something other than ships if they're talking about CVs versus REs. Flybys have their own kind of special requirement to keep moving outward, not necessarily one at a time. I think I can, and I think I want to. So I'm going to fling this out there and get that going around Saturn. For movement, I mean, we can take a quick look at what the world is like. Most people not doing anything too exciting, landing reserve ships. Kind of iffy, you know, like the Chinese could build a base out here to restock that, but they don't have that heavy transport capacity that the Russian does. So it's like, I don't know how big a deal it is. It might be better to be here. And you know, I can even dismantle it if I don't like that ship. This is something fairly common that I'm seeing. It might be my naivete. A bunch of players throwing stuff to go chase the common mission. Okay, so the EU just gained a mission success on Callisto. They didn't want the world card, but you see they got the depletion. They already had a mission, in addition to the Callisto one they have. So they gained politics, a victory point, and they have to get rid of this. This actually goes back to the pool. Now this is kind of a pain because I had assumed that mission markers were just a deck, a stacked deck, but apparently they're not. They're a pool like these other markers that are out here that gets returned. So by discarding it, it essentially goes back. I'm wondering if cards are worded the same way when you discard a world card. Yeah, it says discard that isn't eligible, don't redraw. It ends up back in the deck. From some other things that I've seen, I don't see them in here. Well, here we have one here. Replace any existing world part that was previously, or return it to the deck. I think ideally I would be reshuffling this whole pile and restacking it. It's a fairly rare occurrence, so I don't mind kind of dumping out a pile or whatever to reshuffle it. I don't want to do that with the world cards because there are a lot of, hey, I don't want this one reactions, at least at this point in the game. Later on it might be appealing to add them, but right now, you know, the EU doesn't feel like they're the most likely to get out here and start exploiting that planet, so screw it. It doesn't actually have that stuff I found. I kind of don't like that aspect, but I also kind of don't like the replacement aspect of, oh, I found something that other people are going to like less, and I'm going to remove the current capabilities on that planet and deplete them just through exploration rather than, like, you know, like, oh, I've mined those resources out or anything like that. It's nothing like that. So there's some aspects of the game that, you know, I mean, every game has its aspects that don't feel quite right. But in this case, it's more a mechanical thing. Geez, I really don't want to reshuffle that. Of course, the problem is I ended up drawing Callisto again right away. So I did another search with this flyby that went by. One thing with the flybys, you know, I often make the plan because if you boost it with a little extra oomph, you can get closer to someplace. But honestly, the way the movement capability works, it's pretty much as good to fly through everything on the way as it is just to send something straight out where you want to go. The one disadvantage to it is, you know, if you're going where you want to go, you might not want to make all the intermediate searches. But, you know, if you were just looking at, hey, let's say I can't fail. Let's say my equipment's very, very good, and this is never the case, but let's say it's very, very good, at least that I've seen. Well, from Earth, right now most people have LV2s, which means they can only jump one extra space. So by going to the asteroid belt, they're at the +3, and moving to all the other areas, basically what they get is they get free searches on the way. But again, they're not really free, because if you take them, you end up rolling some dice for failures that otherwise you wouldn't have to do. But you don't have to take those searches. Of course, you're also on the board landing in flyby boxes where somebody could militarily intervene with you, whereas they can't intervene with you when you're in deep space transits. Telescopes keep racking up the score, getting 2 depletions on this. I chose to keep this one because of the exploration +1 spectrometer. Another thing is, as this deck begins reducing, and I'll have to reshuffle it, I may have to, you know, something this far out, nobody's going to be able to play with. But one of the reasons I took it is that the EU has a flyby with a spectrometer on it, which could get out there. I don't know if other people do, but it looked to me like an advantage that I don't think I've seen on other people's ships, so I'm probably better at that kind of stuff. I also picked up another mission over here with Titan, and that's why they have a victory point marker. Strangely enough, they didn't find life, and this South American orbiter there might pick that off for them. That's a neat depletion. This Japan just got one against Venus, which Venus is becoming pretty heavily explored. At some point, it'll be at its fixed point at 0. If people keep flying through. Now, I was going to fly here, but actually I'm not going to. Remember what I told you about, hey, you might as well just keep going through everything? Yeah, unless you do want to go someplace else. And the reason the someplace else makes sense in this case is that I get more searches in the search boxes. So if I move from Mars to here, I'll only be on the 1 box. I'll only get 2 searches. I may only want 2 searches, but maybe I want a 3rd one or whatever. And honestly, the look here doesn't mean as much to me. So yeah, there is a good reason to be in boxes for longer. Out here, less so, because the boxes you actually want to search from are kind of, you know, I mean, the 2 box, the 2 box, the 2 box. You're probably not searching from the 3 box right now yet. So those extra ones are kind of like, I don't really want to do anything. But here, I'm looking at, well, I'll be able to do a couple of searches on Mars, but then when I get to the asteroid belt where I'm actually interested in getting a depletion, maybe I'm not getting as many searches as I would like. So you can kind of balance that kind of decisions. And we're at the end of the explorations. I don't know. You know, it's kind of hard to capture what's happening without going into the details. I mean, you know, stuff is happening is basically kind of the view I get. So, you know, we got a depletion there, but lost our flyby. And then there's things where, hey, you can catch me where I fuck up. So like, I found that I had a Asian flyby sitting in the Jupiter box. I don't think I rolled for it. I certainly didn't move it on, so I rolled again. I think it gained a biomarker, but was destroyed. So, worst comes to worst, we can call it a, hey, they got to see more, at greater risk or something like that if I did fuck up. It's really not that big a deal. In terms of the trade and base construction, obviously there are no bases that can trade, but also there's no resources on the bases, on the one base that could do anything. So I don't have to worry about that. And that's it for tonight. I'm just not well enough to play much. 36, the only thing that was purchased was Asia is lifting up its crude vehicle again. And now let me just jump down to the movement. Interesting movement effect, other than, hey, the US has basically nothing to do. Yeah, they've got some stuff in the works that's heading somewhere, but yeah. And actually they lost an opportunity because remember, they have the reusable lift vehicles. Well, that hasn't helped them because they lost their CV, and I don't know. Maybe I reused them. Maybe I forgot because it's over there. I don't know. I don't know if I just discarded them thinking, oops. All right. But China had something over here at Saturn, and they were interested in Jupiter. They had an orbiter, I think, around Titan. They tried to move it over there to get it into the 2 box, and they would start, taking shots at getting this, which, would just be, if they got it before 2040, it would be kind of a negative thing, but not that bad, and it puts it back in the thing, so whatever. But they destroyed it instead. So now it's exploration time. And for the exploration, geez, it's just so hard to remember what the hell happened. I mean, stuff broke, stuff happened. That's unfortunately the way it kind of works for me when I try to remember, because it's all very in the moment. One thing I can point out too is everybody was here. I accidentally had them here. They wanted to go there for Phobos. And South America, the last person out of them actually got that. And I haven't drawn a new mission, which now is Neptune. Well, that's kind of a bonus. Not really for the US. I was going to say, no. But they're heading out there for something. They've got Triton out there. I hope it's in the right area. In some cases, it's important to kind of have them aligned right. So like Jupiter, some of them have the radiation symbol. So I kind of want to have them next to that so that I remember it. Yes, the planet itself has it too, but it helps me to not get confused. Otherwise, I don't know, the EU lost another telescope. I don't see anything too exciting that happened, I mean, people basically collected chits. If something really exciting had happened, I would have stopped and said something about it. But in some cases, equipment malfunctions happened, and I kind of didn't really think that was important enough to call out, which kind of kills some of the storyline. And now we're on, 2037, I guess. Because nobody has anything at a base that they can do anything interesting with. Like, nobody's building up a base. There's one base on the game right now, that Russian base. The Chinese could have set up a base conceivably, but they don't. The only place they could set one up is in Earth orbit. And they're kind of like, that makes sense for the Russians with their heavy lifting capability. It does not make a lot of sense for us. In the decade, almost everybody's used up all their money, which is kind of a weird thing. I feel like it's going to create a strange sort of pulsing to the game that every turn finances wouldn't, but, keeps the numbers smaller, so that you produce, small amounts of stuff once per 10 years instead of, amounts of stuff once per year, but you would have to have the costs on everything be kind of higher if you did that. Not necessarily the same amounts of stuff produced, but, to get the same proportions. The only thing we saw built was the EU through an orbiter around Neptune, or out that way, and they were the only ones with enough money to take advantage of anything. Other people have $2-3, just not enough to play with. So, I think we're on exploration already. Another turn without anything too exciting happening. South America lost their flyby that was going through here. Otherwise, I don't even think we saw a depletion. We saw something that got a victory point, a political marker. Oh, it was a depletion? Yeah, there was a depletion. It was over here on Earth where it basically doesn't matter. And we push in, and we're getting close to that economic phase. That's the end of another year. One more year and things get very interesting. Right now we're in kind of a slow point. And yeah, people's stuff is kind of degrading and falling apart. We got the Japanese flyby continuing onward. Got a rover here on Triton. Bunch of rovers here exploring the shit out of this. But we did empty out the engineering and physics pools. So those got reset. So we've got, some people who are breaking away with a lot of points. Japan, the EU has a lot of research, which kind of explains why they have so many points. All right. Guess that's about it. Like last turn, nothing basically happened except mandatory movements heading down the tracks. Nobody had any shifts that they want to make. We're going to be hitting the exploration side now, though. And at the end of exploration, nearly everybody's little robotic equipment is died. Yeah, we have some things that still haven't made it where they're going. Forgot to make that Japanese flyby. Let me make a check on that. I don't think I did anything for that. It's not Ceres. What's my best shot? IO at 7 looks like my best, so that's a 9. I'll just roll this. And we have a failure. We have a successful investigation and a failure on the thingy. So IO, just to show you the mechanism once more, because I skipped them accidentally. Not big enough for a depletion. We had a depletion on Vesta, and that's why he has a victory point, because he exchanged Vesta in for another chit that got shuffled in there. I don't remember which one. I don't remember what his original was, but now he's got Ceres that he's interested in. And we lose this and get a mechanical check. So that some more stuff comes by. That's kind of cool because it pares down, what you have to be at for your support limits. So it's not that terrible a thing to lose things, but some of them are. The U.S. lost its I think it had a rover actually over on Triton, and they lost that. And that's a big expense to get that out there. And you still only get one engineering token for the failure. So it's better, to do your early exploration close in. But if your chits are saying, hey, I want this, and you don't have a mission, well, you got to score that. Now, you could spend a politics marker to reshuffle the missions. Hard to do. If I had a cup for the missions, it would be easier, but yeah. One of the things is, though, if you don't score a mission, it goes back in. And we've had a couple of reshuffles like that. That means we are done because nobody's got any base improvements that they can spend right now with the first decade. And in particular, we get a couple more missions added, which will get shuffled in, that are a little bit harder to do. That's why they're there. The crew exploration of Mars and it's the comet that's near it. And we move to a completely new section of the game that we have not done before, which is this economic phase. Okay, let's see what we do. We look for the right roles. Collect politics markers in return for and roll for events. Each player is going to get 2 politics marker, and you get additional ones for alliances. Well, no alliances were made yet. So everybody's just going to get 2. Now, unfortunately, this means change in some cases. So I'll give 2 to the U.S. because they can afford it. But this is going to turn into 6. And so on. I'll be back in a moment. Experience, I'm going to play with all the events in the game. There are some that are kind of like, hey, make sure you got everybody's agreement. And it almost sounds like make sure you have their agreement when it happens, which is bullshit. Make these decisions before you start playing. So what do we do here? Collect an extra politics marker, then roll to apply 1 event, starting at 2, starting in 2100. So we get a percentage. And we got an 05, which is a publicity campaign. The player with the lowest initiative can choose to increase the exploration value of 1 world of their choice by 2 for a world that's not fully depleted. I don't know. I mean, South America is set up for Uranus. I would like to increase that. It's not fully depleted. So I'm going to move that up to a 7 and make it more interesting. But it's more interesting for everyone now. That's the negative to it. Okay, well that was easy enough. Initiative step. Now everybody's going to roll percentile dice, but they can pay to jump their initiative. How valuable is initiative? Well, yeah, it could be. How valuable are those politics markers? That's the decision I have to make. And I'm going to have to take this offline and think about what are my different things that I can spend my politics markers on. At the very least, I can get technology and stuff. There are points where the initiative is more valuable. There's no question about that. But how do I make that determination right now? I don't know. There may be times when I'll say, oh, I have to have initiative. But I don't see anything that's really driving that right now. So I'm going to guess that turning those politics markers in is better. But I just want to make absolutely certain. Turning them in for either money or for diplomacy or for technology is better than increasing my diplomacy check. And yeah, I'm just gonna say that. So here's the hard part. I have to record all the percentile dice, and you only have 1 set of percentile dice in the game. So let's roll for the North Americans first. 34. The way I'll record this is like this for now. And I'll just work my way through and we'll get a new initiative order. To think about this shit, I was thinking, hey, initiative might be important. Well, I don't see anything there for it, but there's an extra politics marker for the EU, which I missed. And again, so much of this is remember all your stuff. It's like Age of Renaissance, except Age of Renaissance had a neat little look to see if you have this technology built into the sequence of play. It still wasn't enough for me to handle things. But here, with this very rich tech chart, about as, probably not that much different from, and the policy tree, that much different from Age of Renaissance, but without those little triggering actions in here. So let me make sure I don't have anything here, because this is something I have not done yet. I don't see anything except maybe this. Yeah, he's got the signs of life, which is going to give him some extra bio research. Got to remember that. So now I've got all the numbers down. 65 is the highest I've gotten. That's 6 there, 5 there, and that was Europe. So they now are in the first initiative position. I'll put them down there so I remember. Who's next? I got a 45. That looks next. That'll be Asia. I find them, and I put them down there. Okay, that gets rid of their chits. 43s are next. I have 2 of them. Imagine that. Russia and China. Russia had the higher initiative, and ties go to whoever had the highest previously. So Russia, then China here. And those are my 2 43s. The chits don't work the way I'm used to, so I'm used to the odd number being on top from so many other games that don't have a 0 in them, basically. 39, oops. Okay, I just threw Japan in and I don't know what it was. Shit. I threw Japan in instead of China, I think. I think Japan is next. And then we have a 39 and a 34, so South America's next, and the US is last. Which means I can no longer follow seating order. That's fine. But it does add to the burden of the decision making in the game as to who goes next. It's always easier to just follow seating order. Obviously, there's a specific advantage to going first, and you don't want that to be constantly fixed by seating order. I kind of like the 18XX solution is kind of a nice compromise. Hey, we'll follow seating order, but the person who goes first is chosen. But that can create some unfair positioning advantages, as we see in 18XX constantly. And people have tried to resolve that with a standard, randomized or otherwise programmed per person initiative order, like this has, basically. Okay, so we finished the initiative step. We go to the diplomacy. Okay, we roll a die to see who shifts. Well, so this is kind of weird. So here, we're supposed to use the initial. And we roll a single 10-sider. And we got a 1. All right. This actually doesn't matter, but the EU, had they not been on neutral with everyone, all their relationships would shift 1 towards neutral. Okay, so that was kind of a waste, but... Next, in reverse initiative order, we announce how much we're going to affect relations. So here's the thing. Free trade gets both sides money and the capability to deal in resources with a base, but none of the bases, none of the bases have settlements in them, so none of them are tradable. However, there might be a trade marker there, and then the settlements gets increased, so we'll see how that works. So there might be some capacity for trade. Oh, right. On the other hand, we could try to dick over people with an embargo or war. This seems a little early to do it. It's really kind of telegraphing. What you want to do is hit somebody, I think, who has exposed resources that you can pick on, and the only person who does is the Russians, and I don't think they're doing all that well. So, what else can we use these damn politics markers for? The question I was trying to avoid before. See, the problem is if I use it for this, I'm not just helping me. If I get a 1 billion increase, and that's all you really get, no matter what level you're at, it's one that's shared on both sides of the alliance. So, let's go find what politics markers allow. Yeah, I'm taking the day off because I was so fucking sick yesterday and this morning, and I don't know how much. I had a meeting and it wore me out, and this is kind of wearing me out too. 2 tech into your tech bank. It's worth $1 at any point. That sounds better than trying to increase trade. Spend 2 markers to return your mission and redraw. Spend 4 markers for a victory point. That's pretty cool. Attempt to decrease your foreign relations. Yeah, I'm not really convinced without trading that there's any real reason to dip things. I mean, the money for a deal is not that great. However, diplomacy has other impacts, doesn't it? Like if you're in alliances, you get something, which is not explained in the sequence of play that I see, so I'm going to have to look here. If they have an alliance, they can form fleets, but they get something else. An extra politics marker for each alliance you have. So spending a politics marker to get somebody up to alliance makes sense. However, even if 2 people spend, I think that's not going to get them much. So each attempt is a roll of 6 or less. And it weakens your position. But on the other hand, you know, it might be a good idea to be allies with somebody who has military advantages. It might be to your advantage to push for that. Who's militarily good? Well, the Chinese are. So they're the one that people might want to ally with. All right. Let's see what we got. The U.S. is like, we're tech superpower. We should be able to respond to whatever. We're the U.S. We don't need to ally. South America. So this actually is a reason that South America might want to try to build a base. I don't know if they started. They did not start with capability for CV, did they? Or did they? I don't remember. They did not. So they couldn't build a base to begin with. But they have an added capability to launch materials up. Japan. Yeah. I think nobody is going to play except maybe Russia. They have a base, I'm going to say on a 1 or a 3. They're going to spend 1 on China and try to get it up to trade. They choose not to. Okay. So that gets me to there. And now we get to the production step. And I want to make me some food. So for the production step, let's start with 1 person. I would kind of like to do Russia because they're the most interesting. But let's just do the North Americans first because they're over there on the left. And it'll be easier. So they get cash and tech points based on the current decade on their faction sheet. I'm in the 2030 to 2060 zone. So I get 30 billion, not 300 billion in cash. Now, here's the problem. This is modified. There's my 30 billion. But I seem to remember something impacted this. Plus 2 billion earth production. So there we go. And they're not the only one who gets this. The Asians get it too. Okay, we also get technology. There are no pirates, no policy, no foreign relations blockades or mission marker. Oh, mission marker. If he had a mission marker, he would get 1. He also gets 2 physics. Let's find them. Yeah, this chart is kind of tight. Let's see, where's the US in here? This is not the most well-designed interface, but I don't know. I don't have an immediate suggestion. 3 bio, and where's engineering? There it is, 3 engineering. Okay, let's keep looking for other things that we're supposed to do though. If we had bases we could produce, we don't have any CVs that are out there. Okay. Reduce your production of bases if they're in the same area in the same world, and this is actually done in initiative order. So there is a reason to maybe not do it in this order. But let me jump to the Ruskies next, because they do have a base. They are producing something in it too. They have tech production in it. Okay, so we look again. Earth production is 28 billion. I don't think that's modified. And obviously we're going to see a big rush into space now, because everybody's got money again this decade. And I think that's going to be the pattern through the game, because the ships get more expensive as you go, and your missions, the things you want to do are further and further away from Earth. So you'll find you're running out of cash constantly, because all your production comes each decade, which feels a little weird to me again. 3 physics, 2 engineering, 4 biology. Oh, China had a plus 20% to their initiative roll that I didn't remember. Terrible. Okay, yeah, far enough ahead anyway. So yeah, can never remember things that are on tracks like that, and the one time this comes up every 10 years, it's never going to stick in my memory. Okay. So what are we on Russia? I have not yet done these. So 3 Russian physics. Boop, boop, boop. Yeah, I don't know where to fucking find them. There's Russian biology. That's 4. Let's get that out of the way. Is Russia under here? Russian engineering is under here. That's only 2. But I got to find the Russian physics, which I expect to be far ahead, but it is really way back here. Okay. All right. But now here's where it gets interesting, because I have a base, and that base is allowed to produce. And I would have to do this in initiative order if there was somebody else with a base. But what this is going to do is create 3 additional tech point production. Now it's in Earth orbit, which is specified somewhere here. 3 in any field of your choice. Oh, great. Well, the problem with that is I have to look at the whole tech chart and figure out where I want my points. And I have absolutely no idea. I do have an idea. I have 22 research engineering. 3 more gets me to crewed vehicle CV3. I want that. Physics is my weak point. I'm not going to have an easy time getting out of Earth general orbit area right now. But let me grab 3 physics, 3 engineering research, so that I can get up to CV3. This could be useful too, but And we're not interested in weaponry. Component design, what's this? Malfunction rate starts going down. Okay, whatever. All right. I think that's the end of production for Russia. I'll do everybody else's. It's really just look up on the chart and add things. Russia had the only interesting choice with some tech production in near Earth orbit. Remember, missions give an extra buck. Now, they don't say this on their back, and they don't sit in a space that says to give them an extra buck, but that means instead of 28 million or billion, we get 29 billion for Europe. And I already took care of their policy, so that's not a problem. What about here? No, that doesn't affect them. Again, you got to look everywhere, all over the place. Some of the places aren't right in front of you in this game. And honestly, you could say, well, you'll get used to it. I don't get used to it. Age of Renaissance, I fail completely. And I'm probably at my most frustrated and upset about that when I'm playing in an opposed game. Because I can't just rewind things that I can or fudge things or whatever to try to fix for my bad memory. And, you know, again, with this help, yeah, this might help as much as the Age of Renaissance chart does, but it's still not enough for someone with my kind of mental deficiencies. Interesting little thing, South America doesn't start with a policy. And I feel like I fucked something up and I don't remember what it was. I noted it in my head and forgot it. And damned if I can remember. Oh yeah, I know what it is. I forgot to check my limits. So for North America, support limits RE3, CV, and base 1. I have no CV or base. REs, I have 1. The probe doesn't count. And let me look quickly off camera to make sure nobody else is. That should have been done back in the production stuff. I think. Well, that's where I am. Okay. He's actually within. Let me just take a quick peek at Russia's because it's kind of interesting. Robotic Explorers, I actually don't have any out there. I don't get a refund for that of any kind. CVs, I do have 2. And I'm allowed a 3rd one actually because of my policy. These would be kind of nice if, you know, I could do something. If these counters weren't so big, and they kind of annoy me how big they are, I could put something like that up there to indicate the policy difference. And I could find other counters to use for that. However, unless I have a solution to all of the policy and technology issues, using counters as one-offs to try to reflect one little piece isn't enough. It feels like the whole game needs some sort of additional information thing. And I think the easiest is writing it down. It would be helpful. Again, Age of Renaissance does it where there's, you know, inside the rule book, it triggers you over, or at least on your player sheet, it triggers you over to where you have to look to get your bonus. It's still not enough for me, but it should be enough for most people. This feels this feels way more of a burden on, did you remember what you got? You know, especially since it's in so many disparate places to begin with, comparatively. Of course, you know, there are other complex schemes where there's crap spread out all throughout like that. Just feels like this is aiming at a different kind of market, a more Euro market than some of those others. And one game of that nature is, you know, my good old Europa Universalis, which, wow, there's lots of shit there. And sure, I forget shit in that too, at about the same rate as I do in Age of Renaissance or in this. The difference being, of course, can never get anybody to play that because that's too big a beast. Okay, so anyway, we looked at that. We looked at the CV's bases as 2. I've got 1 base. I'm good. So I don't have to pay. It turns out nobody had to pay. And we move on. Resource transportation. Nobody has trade routes. I could go try to find out where that is, but nobody has it. Add bases, asteroids, pirate, and trade markers. Now roll if you add a non-player faction base. I think without any, that doesn't happen. I think this is just a copy, by the way, of what's in here. But I'm not sure. It's not 2050, so asteroids and pirates don't happen. Okay. I think given that I have 7 players, there are no non-player faction bases. That's not specifically stated here. Maybe the assumption is you'll never have 7 players, which may not be bad for most people. Okay, so let's push on. There is more detail in there than there is here. Oh no, it's all here. Okay. Also assign trade markers for each base that does not already have one. Select the resource type and side. Okay, well, I have 1 base. It doesn't have a population, so nobody can trade with it, but if a settlement shows up, this is what it wants. Okay, it's gonna, or what it has to offer. Odd, it'll be face up. Okay, so the sell side is over here. The buy side is what's available. It will buy up, I think every 2 ore, it'll give you 1 billion credits. I'm not quite sure how that, I can put that up here because it might be of interest to other players. And honestly, that gets used so little that it's kind of the dumping pile that I'm going to use for the missions pile, because this is really something that doesn't need to be used for very often, and the missions can be shuffled later. Okay, develop technologies. All tech markers turn into tech points in the tech bank. Currently we have this set up. Now everything goes back. The pools all get reshuffled, and I think, yeah, this is done in reverse initiative order, 1 tech at a time. This is going to be kind of hard to handle because I need to do a lot of thinking and a lot of consultation. The brain fart issues is the Chinese flag looks to me like the old Soviet flag. Obviously, it's designed after it. So quite often I'm tempted to move the Chinese markers instead of the Russians. And just not used to the modern world, but somewhat more disturbing, that probably doesn't affect as many. For whatever reason, the Asia and South America flag, although they're very different, they kind of blur to me. Probably because they're completely unfamiliar flags to me. I mean, this is sort of a mixture of Pakistan and India. And this, God knows, I mean, it's probably a lot of different. This is Brazil, but I don't know what the rest of it is. And it's just sort of this, it's all one conglomerate now, and it's got this Union type flag. That's just, you know, dross, but whatever. Here are our initial points. You can see big engineering points for Japan and the EU. And then, you know, there's a lot of differentiation. Not necessarily where you'd expect the research to be happening, right? But the game has tilted that out by what people found and where they found it, what neat things they've discovered. So the US is the first. One of the first things I'd want to do is look, hey, I could increase my production, but is there anything that's going to increase tech? I don't see anything directly. And remember, I got some extra points here. I don't remember what they turn into. But tech seems like the most valuable thing to use politics markers for. So they can add 2 tech points each if I need that. And let me look. First of all, one of the most interesting things is trade routes would be really interesting in terms of, well, or shielding if I could get there, or advanced life support. Advanced life support, though, and shielding, these have multiple inputs or prerequisites. So I'd have to work my way up with a lot of stuff. And I'm not really sure what I have. So let me look for my US points. And again, this is not trivial. I got a 14 in physics. I could upgrade my propulsion. Otherwise, I could go for trade routes. I want to spend all my points. I think given physics, probably my bet. The reason I want to use all my points is if you don't use them, they're halved. So that's the physics. Let's see what else we have. Engineering, we only have 19 in. 19 in engineering, that's not going to get me here. Launch vehicles, I can get that. That reduces engine failure rate to 4%, and I can build LV4s. That's not terribly helpful unless I have something else. Component design reduces the malfunction rate, always good. And then space missiles and fighters and stuff like that. Yeah, you know, if I'm going to go for a military option, that's definitely where I want to go. So that's my engineering, and where's my bio? My bio is down at 16, which isn't going to get me crew exploration bonus. I could reduce this. I could buy signs of life. I wonder if I gave those 2 points to the Russians. Somehow I don't think I did, but there's no way for me to tell now. I know I called them out before. I just don't think I remembered them when I got over to Russia. Shit. It's actually on video. All right, I'm pretty sure I did not. So I'm going to make the guess that I didn't. And that's not Russia. That's Russia. Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did not give them the 2 points for the signs of life that they discovered. Not really a worthwhile thing to go for on its own. What's this one? I don't know. I can't read it. 3 biology and 2 physics. So that I can't just buy that though. Somebody has to discover life for that to work. And the US can't just buy it. So what the hell was I thinking? So I can get artificial gravity for 8 of something or another out of some amount that I have here. Out of 16. 16 minus 2. Yeah, this is not good. Okay, I'm going to buy the artificial gravity. And the US is this one. So that cost me 8 of my bio. And like I said, this is going to be... And it's going to just add to my pain structure, right? Now the thing is, I can't buy everything at once like I could in most of these kind of tech tree-based games that I've seen. Things like Advanced Civ or the Age of Renaissance or whatever. I can't just figure out my calculations for one country at a time. I've got to work my way back to other players. So now South America gets their choices. And I'll come back and try to figure out, you know, try to go through what we get at the end and then how I can possibly remember all the changes, because it's hard enough dealing with the starting position, you know. Jump in once more. For South America, the decision is very easy. I can get crewed vehicles for 0. And, oops. These are not in the order I expect. And that's just worth it. The reason being, I didn't have to spend anything. It's not going to get any lower than this. My decision does not impact my later decisions at all. You know, it doesn't cost me anything that I have to, that I want to maintain for some other decision. So as long as that's free, and that's free because these are 3 off each. The reason I know it's 3 off each is from this. If that's wrong and the rules are different, I'm not going to go dig it up and find out. When I say that is, there are a couple of issues here where things are wrong, And then there's like, you know, a whole fair-sized quantity of errata, none of which I could just write into the rulebook in pencil, which means if that errata has errata, which I've seen happen when games have this much errata rather regularly, what I can't do is the one way that I can write in this paper, which is to, I mean, I guess I could use a post-it note and just the sticky side and kind of replace some lines with that and stuff. I didn't see anything that looked vitally damaging except for one thing that was called out that I was doing correctly anyway, I think. No, the thing that I went and looked up. But again, I didn't read through that whole list because I can't just pencil it in on this glossy paper. I'm trying to catch some decisions in real time then. So Japan, same reason. Grabbed the free thing. For China, I grabbed spacesuits for $10. Now, that now has just made this only $1 for everyone else because China has this -4 per player that already developed. So this was a little cheaper for them. You know, yeah, I could wait for somebody else to get something, but you know what? Let's take our bonuses where we want. We're already in there, and there wasn't. Oh wait, we could hold on. I could take that money back. Let me get that 2 bio back. I have a freebie, ion engines. Now again, I've just made this cheaper for other people, but that's okay. You know, I don't mind that that's moved from 9 to free to them. I've saved them $1 to get it. But now that means everybody else has another one that they can go for as we keep moving down the line. The tricky part is Russia wants one thing very, very badly. They want Crewed Vehicles 3, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, because this thing can build them bases elsewhere. But they don't necessarily want to buy it now. The reason being, they have the money for it, and they want it this turn, but the reason being that if they buy it now, they make it a little cheaper for all the other people who don't want it. So you're going to have this kind of game of chicken going on. Eventually somebody's going to buy it, and they're going to make it a few bucks cheaper for other people in terms of the tech. And developing the tech itself is not particularly an advantage. Being the first person to get it isn't an advantage. You don't get any kind of, you know, hey, I got there first and I'm bonused. The thing that's a bonus is I got it and nobody else did, which is most likely the longer you delay. The round with Asia picking up the ion engines for free and the EU picking up the crewed vehicles for free. Now that the crewed vehicles is completely owned by everyone, I'm just going to mark it like that. Obviously, as we pass on through the channels, that becomes less important. But here's the thing. Both of these have to go for this to be cleared out completely. So, yeah. Hard decisions time for the U.S. I was going to buy Signs of Life, but then I said, you know what? I want space habitation instead. Because I could get that for 13. I have 8 bio research. I throw in 5 of points from my political chart points, and I end up with 1 point left, and I get something that's kind of useful. But now I realize that shit, this is where all the balancing in your head goes, and of course, when you're focusing on just one nation, it's a lot easier. But now I have to remember, wait a minute, didn't I want those points for something else? So I go and look for my points again. My engineering is at 19. That doesn't sound terribly good. What did I want for engineering at 19? Well, I would like CV3s probably. CV3s cost 25. 19, well, 25, they cost me 23. So I can't afford to spend my politics markers there. So indeed, I'm going to go back to my original plan and buy the Signs of Life for 7. You got to balance all 3 charts and what you're planning on doing over the entire turn at all times. And, you know, that's not a problem. It's a problem only because I'm playing solo. Feeling like you're making the same decision each time. So for example, the Chinese slipping into here. Well, now I've just made that pretty cheap for everyone else. While it was a couple bucks for me, now it's $1 for everyone else who gets it. But what else am I going to do? go invest in, something where I don't have as much a bonus, but I'm going to get one just to try to maybe delay where other people go. That doesn't sound wise. But likewise, the crewed vehicles, well, now the ion engines are completely filled out. People just grab things when they become free, no reason not to. And that's one reason why it's in reverse initiative. It's to your advantage to go later. To say that points spent on the initiative could have saved me points that I'm spending here. Maybe not so much for the US, who gets a bonus for finding new technologies anyway. But, for a lot of the countries, wow, having initiative is an important thing. A big reason why I probably screwed up with China by not taking into account their policy. Russia hates their choices right now. So the first thing I looked at is, I want to get CV3. That's great. I don't want to give it to other people, but to do it, well, I'm spending all my engineering. It might be my best move. Over on physics, I have very little. I have 7 physics. If I wanted to get here, it would cost me 12. So it would cost me 5. It would cost me 3 chips, 3 political chips. Space weapons would cost me 10. Also not good, I would have to spend to get any of the advances in physics. So physics looks unappealing at this moment, but it might be better in a little while. Okay. So then I look at biology, and biology is particularly weird. So for biology, that's where I actually have a lot. I have 24. I could go up to something, and that would open things up for people. First of all, I could just grab space habitation, but then I make space habitation cheap for everyone else. I could grab space operations, but maybe I don't really want that all that much. Suits I could get, but man, I'm starting to cause problems if I buy that. Where I'm making it cheaper again for other people, except for North America, who, would maybe make it cheaper for us. So, and I can't go here. So I'm kind of torn. Do I want to make bases cheaper when I'm the one who bought a base already? Geez, I don't know. So I think I'm going to go for the space operations. But the main reason is I want to delay on this because I think I'm going to get it this cheaper. But I could probably get this cheaper if I waited as well. However, this is the more important to me. The low-end folk who are getting stuff for free, basically, Asia pays €1, pay 0 to get something that other people, had to pay more for, even though they had advantages. Yeah. Of course, Russia and the U.S. started with this, but the Chinese getting it was kind of that's just me being OCD because the flags are shaped differently. Back around, I guess. Problems is, and this seems almost ass backwards to me. The U.S. military posture is beginning to look appealing to them on the technology, but the decision on the diplomacy was already made. I wouldn't be able to gain from it right away because I didn't take a military posture on the diplomacy chart, which then kind of means, gosh, what does that mean? Also, I would need to get a policy to support it as well, which, again, that's something that I'm not in a position to do. So the idea of building weaponry, yeah, maybe, but it doesn't seem the most appealing thing right now. Actually, what I did was I bought trade routes. Other option would have been propulsion. Propulsion, everybody wants it. Everybody could immediately start taking advantage of my bonus there. I mean, I don't know how much they want it, but on the other hand, trade routes, hey, people want this more already. And they can't reach this until they get this. So let's go for that and just push forward there. Now, of course, we have to get shielding before we get long distance space flight. But yeah, the nice thing about this is if I build a couple bases or something. Do I have room for a couple bases? Nope. I end up with, but I can pay for them. I end up with a capacity to move some resources around. And I think I can move them to Earth too, which is particularly appealing. Or from Earth to somewhere else. I'd have to look at it. Because North America, US, did not, Canada, part of Mexico, did not have significant points available for what they were doing, and they had to spend additional points to get there. They really want to make sure they get CV3, so they had to make it first. And so Russia's dithering won them a bonus. They're going to get this $3 cheaper than they would otherwise. Maybe even cheaper, who knows. Now for the US, they have basically 2 points plus no more than 1 in any particular area. So that gets them to 3, 5. There's nothing worth 5. So they are going to have to pass, and they are no longer in the game for the technology, which means these people who've been able to, you know, just collect free stuff, like the EU, like Japan. Look, Japan's always going last in line for whatever reason. I'm signifying that by putting them on top. They're ending up getting, you know, technologies for free constantly. And they actually have fair amounts of points. They're going to make a big leap forward after collecting all their free stuff off of these other players. And again, that's baked in by not just the initiative track. The initiative track influences it, but the points you have. You have more points, well, you can delay buying things that will help other people if you buy them. And by where you are. The US starts with so much of the technology. I think they had everything that anybody had at the beginning of the game. I may be mistaken by that. The one exception was the search for life, which everybody's gotten now because, you know, China can get it for 2, great, and everybody else can get it for 1 or less. And now that just becomes your freebie for the turn, and a little bit more delay time, forcing the decision on other people. The higher expenses as we go up, so this costs China 7 instead of 2, you know. So there's a certain level of, yeah, what's up with that? Now I gotta remember, this is a lot cheaper than it looks. Because I don't have all the pieces piled there. That's one of the issues with prerequisite pieces, is I forget that everybody's actually in on it. I fucked up majorly. Minimum cost is 5. No freebies. That makes this all not work the way it has. And I don't know what the fuck to do about that. I mean, I can figure out some of these, but man, oh man, I feel like I royally screwed the pooch on this. This is, you know, I had this in the back of my head. Hey, isn't there a minimum cost of 1 on these? I better look. I can correct that. No, minimum cost is fucking 5, which makes sense, but again, it means there's a lot that wouldn't have even happened. And I don't know if I can fucking unwind this appropriately. Jesus. I'm going to have to consider what I can fucking do about it. Because the whole point was, yeah, I'm willing to buy shit that I don't even want because it just disseminates through the globe. But doing that wrong, this is going to be really hard to unwind, and maybe the thing I do is just say I give everybody the free tech they've gotten so far, and that's it. Let me try to figure this out. This is going to take me forever to understand, and I got to go shopping today. If I could play video backwards, this would be very easy, but I'm trying to restore things, working my way back through the chain, trying to remember what's going on. Of course, it's like 6-7 hours later. I've gone shopping, recovered from that because it was very taxing just walking back up my hill with a load of groceries on my back. And, you know, I'm going to do my best to try to fix this, but I probably can't get it completely right. But I think that's better than just pushing on, giving all these freebies out to everyone. Then reversing everything though, which I don't think I can do. What I'm gonna do is I'm backing it up to this state. I think all the freebies and really cheap ones have gone by. China already paid a fair amount for this and they had this. So their gain there is fine. Other people already had things or paid the right amount. So all I'm skewing is the ordering, and I feel like now if I work my way backwards, starting with South America, I can start filling things in here by buying them at the proper price. Yes, the ordering's skewed. It's screwed up. But I think this will get me pretty damn close to what would actually have happened. May even be the same. Sure, things don't screw up too much. I'm buying this stuff back that's sort of the cheapest. So the 5-point stuff is getting bought anyway. Maybe not as much as before. We're not up to that level yet. So like this isn't filled out, for example, when it was free. It automatically got filled out, but I see, you know, some people are making harder choices. But for example, Japan, who had a ton of engineering points, is like, well, I don't want to reduce the price of this for anyone else, but this is stuck at 5 anyway. So instead of that 0 choice, the 5 choice is being made in pretty much the same manner. So I don't think we're getting too much disruption off of it. Just we're not going to see this huge leap forward by the people who, you know, had more points. EU kind of shows that there's still some room for like trying to jockey for position. They have a lot of engineering points. They bought themselves the cheap space missiles for $5. Those aren't going to be useful. Nobody's at war. Nobody can actually shoot anything down in this neutral state. You have to be at least in an embargo to do anything military. But I'm getting a technology and delaying and forcing someone else to go. Now that someone else could be willing to spend the $5 on the engineering, but it's a harder choice now. So it's kind of cool. So we've continued on for quite a bit. We're kind of at the point where only the people who had a lot of points are left. Japan and the EU, everybody else is set up, and now they're kind of jockeying for position. So like the EU said, oh, I have physics points and Japan doesn't have many. Yeah, they could, you know, use a lot of tokens. They have a lot of points in the bank and get something in physics. But otherwise they're going to have to spend their engineering points. So they either have to spend their tokens ahead of time on something that's kind of iffy, to tell you the truth. I bought the weapons, which is not very appealing. So I think what I'm going to be doing is forcing the Japanese to start spending on engineering instead. They do have enough points they could jump something in the bio, though. Do they have 15 points? I don't know about that. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, yeah, they do. So they could jump that into place. Of course, if they do that, the EU... I believe Russia actually could afford something if they could get back in. The EU has 1 there, so let's say we went for space mining, which is 15 points for Japan. Well, that would drop it to 12 for the EU, and the EU also has a ton of points left to jockey around with. So by buying something that kind of goes with this, that I don't really care too much about, but didn't burn into my points, it means I have more points to spend on either bio or engineering, both of which look more appealing right now, because really the only thing I could have spent points to get would have been propulsion. Spaceflight, it was out of range. Shielding, probably could have had the money for it, but I needed both prerequisites, and I didn't have the space weapons yet. So the EU kind of got the edge out of all that. We spent all our points. Now, any politics markers, are converted. Now, I could convert them into tech, but it's kind of a waste because your tech gets halved. And it's rounded up, so all these 1s stay as 1s, which means they're not really a hurt. I think the general rule is rounding. So instead, I'm going to be converting tech into money. Or politics into money. Huh. 3 of them for the EU, but I didn't really have a good use for 6 more points. Although I probably should have. I'm not sure. Because it looks like I've jumped into all the kind of cheap places. In particular, I jumped into here. Now, if I hadn't jumped into there, that was 5 points, and 3 more is 6, that's 11. Still not enough to get me anything. There were no cheap bios kicking around for me to move to. So I'll move the rest of the money over, and at the same time, I'll have this. And these are all rounded up. There's a base rounding rule for this game. To finish up the economic phase settlement growth, there's only one place that there could be settlements, which is here. There are none. If there were like one settlement, I'd get a roll to see if it expanded. But since no one's actually living there except for, you know, temporary crew or whatever, I don't have to worry about it. And nothing increases. The next thing is the policy step, though. And now each player gets to select one new one. They don't tell you the order in it. I would say it's probably should be reverse, but it doesn't actually say that. So I think it's got to be in regular order. It's definitely a disadvantage to have to go first, but I'm okay with some of the things in the ordering being to your disadvantage. It's just this is always to your disadvantage to go first in terms of picking policy. But given the other advantages, hey, call it a catch-up move or something like that, I guess. Build these out. A lot of people interested in getting more crew vehicles up. The Chinese slipped in a base support limit increase because they're only allowed 1 base. Yeah, I don't have any yet, but you know, whatever. South America slipped into the politics because that actually the end point of that is kind of neat. Each politics marker is worth 3 tech. Nice turnaround on that, and I think you get the 2 extra politics markers as well. I think it's that these aren't cumulative, but this is with it, but I'm not positive of that. I'd have to look that up. But they liked that idea because their support limits are pretty good. On the other hand, Pakistan had a low robotics, or not that low. I'm not sure why they slipped in there. But they're like, well, we want to go with that. Russia looked at it and said, you know, my limits aren't great, but I'd rather have the $2 billion. You know, just different thoughts across the board. So that's, this video has overstayed its welcome due to my screw up, but that's going to put us at the beginning point of the year 2040 for the main part of the game. The thing is, this is sort of like an economic interface. It only happens once a decade. It's kind of not really part of a turn, even though it's expressed as that in the game. At some point I gotta figure out what the hell all this means. We can take a look at it, but it's not that, I don't know. I don't feel like coping with it and adding to the length of this video. So we'll see if I mark up cards or figure out some other way of keeping track of, you know, the large number of differences that are now in play. But now it's time to rock and roll back into the main game, and everybody's got piles of money, all kind of new fancy ships to build, and some of them have new goals to hunt down. Others have old goals that they weren't able to succeed at. Like I think there's a Saturn goal kicking out there that didn't get finished. Yep, Russia has that. The US failed over, well, no, they're sending an orbiter out there to Triton, so they're already, is that them? No, that's an EU one. Wonder what that's up to. Callisto, no, that ain't where it's going. Yeah, I don't know where this thing's up to. Is there Neptune's out here? Yeah, Neptune's out there. That's what it's up to. All right, let's send it up. And that's it for tonight.